Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Yeah, good to see you all. Good to see you online. If you're joining us, wherever you're joining us from on planet Earth today, we are so glad you're here. But we did want to say, if you're in Toledo, Ohio, you're in the best place to be. It's sunny here. It's going to be in the 60s tomorrow. Those of you in San Diego are jealous. So wherever you're watching this, Toledo is where it's at. So just go to Relocate Toledo. It's the place to be. We're so glad that you're with us, and it's just good to be amongst people who are trying to navigate a crazy season of life. I want to begin by asking a question. How many of you are into time-saving devices? Go and raise your hand. I think that, I see more showing up. Literally, there is an abundance of time-saving devices. I was on my favorite website, simplemost.com. I'm sure you're there a lot. And I read about 18 time-saving devices that you need now, according to this website. So you need to go make a lot of money, and then you need to buy these 18 time-saving devices. And then I thought, 18 is just not enough. I need more than that. So I went to 22words.com, and there are 37 gadgets that you cannot live without, according to 22words.com. Some of us have been in this crazy, let's manage our time and our life for quite a while. How many of you, I'm going to date myself, but remember what was called Franklin Covey planners? These were these stores, and they had it was like a Trapper Keeper, if you remember those from the 80s. Mine had Smurfs on them, but you would literally kind of chart your whole life out, and you had this little system. And then in the late 90s, we really advanced, and some of us had what was called the Palm Pilot. Is there anybody who owned a Palm Pilot? If you still own it, I think you can sell those on eBay for about $40,000, and they're really, they're either good paperweights or something. But we so advanced into 2021, and now we have smartphones. And I was reading about on a smartphone, there are apparently 16 time-saving apps that you need. If you really want to get the most out of your time, you need 16 apps. You need Todoist. You need Trello. You need Evernote. You need, on and on and on. There's literally an app called Focus Booster. So if you struggle with focus right now, and you have your cell phone, go download Focus Booster app, and that will really help you out. Then some of us are crazy enough that we spend time reading about how to manage time. Literally, I'm going to date myself, but I think the first time management book I read was about 24 years ago in 1997 by a man named Stephen Covey called First Things First. And since then, I've probably read 40 or 50 other books on how to manage time. How absurd. I've spent so much time learning how to manage time. It's interesting. If you go to Amazon today, you will find that there are 60,000 books in print, in publication, that you can get delivered probably by Monday if you order in the next 7 minutes to save time. It's amazing. Time is one of those things that indicates so much of our lives. It feels like at times we're overwhelmed. We're trying to cram things into a chaotic schedule. If you're raising little kids, you feel like, could God just have created an 8th day because 7 is not enough? If you're in graduate school or you're starting a new job, you think, how do I fit all this in? There is just an overwhelming sense of people today who feel overloaded and overwhelmed as it relates to time. And yet, what we know from what we're going to see this morning in the scriptures is time is an incredible gift. It's this incredible resource. And yet, for most of us, we feel maxed out. We feel overwhelmed. We feel exhausted and drained. Because as Americans, we're not very good at how we use our time. Look at some of this. This is the average American. Now, maybe you're above average, and you're like, no, I'm way worse than that. So these stats that I'm going to read you, and don't worry, I won't ask you to pull out your phone and tell us how much time you spent this week on your phone. Maybe you canceled that part of your phone. You're like, it's just too depressing, so I'll just turn that off and not let Apple track me anymore. But this is mind-blowing what the average American does with their time. Literally, Most Americans will spend 6 months sitting at traffic lights waiting for them to change. Isn't that just encouraging? I just say go right through it. I mean, you don't have time for this. Look right, look left, gun it. Take your chances. T-bones happen, but just go through it. Honestly, this is where I hope Elon Musk and Tesla come up with some system so in 5 to 10 years, we never have to wait again. Wouldn't that be awesome? So Elon, if you're watching again this morning, just go ahead and do that for us. You will spend 5 years of your life waiting in lines. Now, I know you think you're the smart person at K. Rogers, and you pull up to Kroger, and you're like, who's the fastest? And you see this person, and then they do the unpardonable sin. They pull out a checkbook. Who writes a check at Kroger's? I mean, and then you're like they're checking in. You got to pull out your ID, and you're like, I really picked the wrong line, and that's why you're spending 5 years waiting in line. I mean, isn't that just amazing? You will spend 3 years in meetings that you don't actually need to be at. So when you this week, when your boss is like, hey, I need to meet, be like, I really don't need to be there. That's part of the 3 years. I'm helping you save time is what I'm doing in this message. You will spend 8 months of your life opening junk mail. Now, the Valpak is not junk mail. If you get coupons to Koala Berry, send them my way, because I have a lot of kids and I need the BOGO. But you will spend 8 months of your life opening junk mail. Is that just encouraging, or does that just make you just weep? Don't attack the Postal Service. They're just bringing it to you. Somebody else is sending it, but it's a little overwhelming. Today, you will receive at least 600 advertisements in some capacity. That's just overwhelming. You're like, well, no, today's Sunday. It's the Lord's Day, and so maybe I won't see that many. You probably will. The average American, check this out, will spend 1,700 hours a year watching television. Do the math. That is 10 solid weeks. That is 20% of your life. That means every 5 years, I think there's something about a Sabbath year, every 7th year, let the land rest. What we do is we spend at least one of those years just watching television. And I know it's so encouraging. I know you get to the end of all your shows and you're ready to give life. You watch the news, you watch CNN and Wolf Blitzer or Hannity, because, on Fox, and you get done, you're like, I'm just so happy. I'm so encouraged. The world is going in such a great direction. And so watching this television is really helping me, Ryan. These 17 hours are well spent. I need this 10 weeks of just sitting there watching television. That's what is good for my soul. It's mind-blowing what we do with our time. This morning, I want to kind of present an idea to you that as it relates to our time. There's this great passage in what has now been called Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. You can read about it in Matthew 6. But Jesus says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be. This morning, I want to present to you the idea that for where your time is, there your heart will be. For where your time is, there your heart will be. Friend, as we talk about our time and this idea of having margin in our lives, really what we're talking about is our heart. One of the greatest writers ever in the scriptures, Solomon, wrote many of the Proverbs. And in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, we read this: above all else, guard your heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. This morning, I would argue that we could say, above all else, guard your time. Above all else, guard your time, for everything you do with it flows from it. Friend, this morning, as we dive into the scriptures here in a minute, we're going to present this idea of what are you doing with your actual lives? What are you doing with your time? Who does your time really belong to? The great business writers of our day said that your system is perfectly designed to get the results you're getting. If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel drained, if you feel exhausted, your system is perfectly designed to get the results it is getting. Your life, friend, is a byproduct of your lifestyle. Your life, Ryan, is a byproduct of your lifestyle. For where your treasure is, there, for where your time is, there your heart will be also. This morning, as we talk about time and margin, I want to talk about three things: your reality, your choice, and your fight plan. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump into today's message. Father, I thank you for each person who's here in person. I thank you for my friends who are online. And God, we want to be a people who live our lives with wisdom as it relates to time. God, we want to be people who don't get to the end of life and say, man, I squandered it. I chased after all these trivial things and these pursuits that were just knocking on my door 24/7, and I just said yes to all of them, and I got to the end, and I have nothing. And so, Lord, I pray that you would do something in this message, that we would become people, men and women, regardless of where we're at this morning as it relates to you, even that can step into this idea of having wisdom with our time and our margin in our lives. So, God, speak through this message. Thank you that you have good things for us. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Your reality, my reality, human beings living in the 21st century reality is life is crazy busy. If you talk to anybody, almost bar none, you go up and say, how are things going? Almost everybody, even in a pandemic when things have kind of slowed down and you may be working from home, everybody's initial response is, oh, things are just busy. I mean, have you ever asked somebody like, well, I don't really have much going on. You need help with anything? Can I come over and paint some walls? Like, can I help with your yard work? Like, everybody is maxed out. They're overwhelmed. They're looking for the eighth day that God didn't create. We just all feel a sense of like, how do I fit it all in and cram it all in? I'm overwhelmed. And not only that, part of us likes it this way. Part of us feels validated by always being needed and always, running from one urgent thing to the next. We feel we're important then. My first ever time management book, I'm going to date myself here, was 27 years ago, written by Stephen Covey, to help address this reality. In his book, First Things First, he says this: urgency makes us feel useful. We feel successful, we feel validated, and we get good at it. Whenever there is trouble, we ride into town, pull out our 6-shooter, do the varmint in, blow the smoke off the gun barrel, and ride into the sunset like a hero. Instant results, instant gratification. People expect us to be busy, overworked. It's become a status symbol in our society. If we're busy, we're important. If we're not busy, we're almost embarrassed to admit it. Busyness is where we get our security. It's validating, popular, and pleasing. It's also a good excuse for not dealing with the first things in our lives. I mean, how many of you hear that and you go, ouch, that guy knows way too much about me. That guy knows way too much about my world. He finishes this idea by saying this: anything less than a conscious commitment to the important is an unconscious commitment to the unimportant. Why do we live our lives like this? I don't think anybody is thinking, man, you know what, Ryan, as I think about this, the reason I live overwhelmed, the reason I try to max out and try and, squeeze everything in and say yes to more and more things is because in the end, I really want unhealthy relationships. In the end, I want to physically be unhealthy. In the end, I want, my relationship with my spouse, if I have one, my kids, I want those to be severed. I want my kids to feel like I was never present, that I was always so busy. I don't think anybody is looking at this and going, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want my legacy to be. That I just tried to squeeze so much out of the lemon that I killed the lemon itself. But that's where so many people are living. Look at the mental health statistics in our country. People are maxed out. People are drained. People are fried and frazzled. And I think underneath so much of it is that if we were to be honest, we fear something. I think underneath so much of it is just a lot of insecurity. A lot of it is just like, I just got to prove myself. I got to measure up. I got to scale my life. I got to scale my degrees. I got to scale my house size. I got to scale the kitchen. I got to just expand and grow and do more. I've got to prove that I'm worth something. And so I'm going to just go and go and go and say yes. And for many of us, the deep cause is we are out of touch with reality. See, God's word, even if you're not a Bible person, Even if you have great issues with the Bible, and I realize in 21st century America, like the Bible scares people and it seems like this oppressive book, it's an incredibly liberating book if you actually read it. And in the Bible, it sets this perspective on time that is so freeing. It reminds us that our time is incredibly limited, it's incredibly brief, and it's an amazing gift. Listen to some of the wisdom literature. This is from Psalm 39 on how limited our time is. It says this, Psalm 39, verse 4, "O Lord, make me know my end, and what is the measure of my days? Let me know how fleeting I am." Can you imagine if you prayed that every morning? Lord, make me know my end, that one day, not only will I attend this person's funeral, somebody will attend mine, and let me know how fleeting my life is. And then he says this, "Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath." What does James call it? A vapor. We're given a moment. We're given these precious moments, limited moments. If you're in your 20s, this is the only time you'll be in your 20s. If you're in your 30s, I thought I'd be in my 30s forever. I'm like, now in my 40s, I'm like, oh, Lord, this is real. This is getting real. And some of you are like, you have no idea, Sonny. But I get it. But my point is, you're only in this moment. I thought we would be in the diaper changing moment forever. I was like, how many butts do I have to wipe? And it's like, thankfully, we've through that moment. Maybe we'll have grandkids someday. Maybe not. I have no idea. But there's only these precious moments for a glimpse. This is how Job puts it. He's even worse about how limited our life is. He says, "Man born of woman is a few days and full of trouble." Amen. Let us pray. Your goodness is running after me. John 14 verse 1, few days and full of trouble. This is biblical realism. He springs up like a flower and withers away like a fleeting shadow he does not endure. Do you fix your eyes on such a one? Will you bring him before you for judgment? Who can bring what is pure from the impure? No one. Then he says this, man's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed. I know the world, the culture sometimes, so you can just fit it on, you can do it all, you can say yes to everything, and you can make it happen. If you get enough time-saving devices, if you buy the Instapot, how many of you own an Instapot, by the way? It's not as Insta as you hoped. That's what I found. Libby will make these things and it blows out the steam, and I'm like, did we just get a choo-choo train? Is that what's cooking the chicken? We just put our chicken in a train set. But anyways, the Instapot is there, and I'm always like, it's not Insta enough. I'm convinced sometimes our conventional oven, that archaic thing called an oven, is faster than the Instapot. But honey, we'll work that out later when I see you face to face. But that's just our reality. We just try and think, well, if I can just do more. The Bible is so realistic. It's like, man, your life is limited. You will have an end. People will come to your funeral. They're going to say things about you. What are they going to say? Well, he tried to cram it in, but he didn't, and now we're just here visiting him in the end. There will be an end. That's biblical realism. Sometimes we're just out of touch with reality. I love how the psalmist puts it in Psalm 90, verse 12. He says, teach us to number our days, O Lord, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Teach us to number our days. That may sound so scary to some of us. That is wisdom. Teach us to number our days. Why? So that we can gain lots of money, so that we can accomplish a ton of things, so that we can accumulate, so that we can scale things. Those are all great things, but they have their place. He's saying something profound here. Teach us to number our days so that we may have and gain a heart of wisdom. Friend, biblical wisdom is when we begin to realize we don't have forever. We have a limited, brief moment, and wisdom is not chasing after every trivial thing that the world is offering us. The world is not offering us bad things. It's just some things are trivial and some things are worthy of our investment of time. Reality is knowing that your days and my days are numbered by God. You get the season you're in right now once. One of my favorite movies, this is embarrassing, and if you look at it and you're like, you judge me, just remember, Matthew 7, Jesus said, don't judge unless you'll be judged. But it was an Adam Sandler movie. Not all of his do I subscribe to, but he was in this movie called Click. And the idea was he had this remote control that anything he wanted to get through, he could just kind of hit the fast forward button. He's like, click. And he ends up being this old cranky guy. And he's like, I fast forwarded through all my life. Now, I know we laugh at that. But like for many of us, we kind of want that. We're like, if you have little kids, you're like, this is just crazy. Click. And then you have like a teenager and like, you're like, wow, he or she, they're a little crazy. Click. And then you're like, wow, this season at work, this is hard. Let's just click through this. And then you're like, sweet, I'm 90 playing shuffleboard in South Florida. And then you're like, this isn't fun either because my back hurts. Where do you click to next? Right? That's the idea. I think for many of us, we don't have wisdom about what we're offered when we're offered a relationship with Jesus. We're offered to orient our lives around the one thing that will ultimately matter. The Apostle Paul, when he was writing and addressing early followers of Jesus, would put it this way in Ephesians 5, verse 15. He says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Friend, where your time goes, there your heart will go. Where my time goes, there my heart will go. Where you and I invest our time is where our lives are heading. Your life is a result of your lifestyle. We, according to God's reality, are given a choice of how we spend our lives. He's so good that he gives us a choice. And we can chase 101 trivial things, or we can submit to the one thing that will ultimately matter. I want to take you to a passage in John 15, a familiar passage where Jesus, I think, sets the course, and he offers us this invitation to live our lives oriented around the one thing that will actually matter. This is what he says in John 15, verse 4 through 16. He says, live in me. Make your home in me just as I do in you. In the same way that a branch can't bear grapes by itself, but only by being joined to the vine. You can't bear fruit unless you are joined with me. Jesus is saying, your life, irregardless of how big you scale it, of how much you accumulate, of how much property you have here on this tiny little planet called Earth. I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos and you buy up half of Central Park. Unless you remain in me and connect to me, the creator of life and time, Jesus is saying, it will all be for nothing. I am the vine, you are branches. When you're joined with me and I with you, the relation, intimate and organic, the harvest is sure to be abundant. Separated though, you can't produce a thing. Some of your translations say you can produce nothing, no thing. Yes, you may be highly productive in our society, but Jesus is talking about a different type of productivity, a fruitful life. Separated from me, you can't produce a thing, he says. I've told you these things. Why? Because I'm mean? Because I'm a cosmic killjoy? No, for a purpose, that my joy might be your joy. Do you get to the end of the week and how you spend your time and go, that was just such a joyful week? You're like, yeah, I do when I'm on vacation. Friend, life is not just meant to be lived for vacation. Jesus is saying, when you walk with me, I'm doing this so that you would have joy. That my joy may be your joy and your joy wholly mature. Then he says this, I'm no longer calling you servants because servants don't understand what their master is thinking and planning. No, I've named you friends because I've let you in on this secret, on everything I've heard from the Father. You didn't choose me. Remember, I chose you and I put you in the world to bear fruit that won't spoil. See, when I think of the picture of fruit that won't spoil, I think of just abundant, good, fresh fruit. How many of you just love to just devour like amazing fruit? Now, spoiled fruit is really nasty. And sometimes I'm not as good of a father as God is, and I will try to make my kids eat a spoiled banana. Have you ever tried that? They never fall for it. They did early on. Is this like, it's like dark, mushy, it's like, oh, what is that? Is that coming from a Gerber can or right from the peel? And it's like, it's just falling out of the peel. And it's like, here, eat this banana. They're like, oh, that looks horrible. And that's how our lives often become. Just these spoiled pieces of fruit. What do we do with spoiled fruit? We just throw it out. Jesus is saying, I want to produce something in you. I want you to be full of joy, full of life, full of tangible, tasty fruit because you have lived in me and your entire life has been oriented around me. Friend, I have a question for you. Is your life with Jesus the overarching priority of your life? That's a choice Jesus is inviting us to say yes or no to. There's really no wiggle room. There's not like Jesus is like, and then there's plan C, where you can give me a tenth of your life, where you can give me an hour on Sundays and perhaps Wednesday nights in a Zoom Bible study. He's like, no, I want the whole thing. I want your life. I have good things for you. I want to produce fruit in and through your life. But you have to remain in me. You have to live in me. You have to, what some old translations would say in John 15, you have to abide in me. The word abide literally means to continue in a place for a set of time, to stay put. Would somebody describe your life right now, this rat race, dog-eat-dog world that we live in, as somebody who just stays put? You stay in one place. You're establishing roots in Jesus. Are you establishing roots in your relationship and friendship with Jesus? If you and I have any hope of leveraging this resource of time for God's purpose for us, we need to abide in him. Now, this does not mean you need to go climb a mountain and sit beside a rock and do nothing but read your Bible all day. You're like, oh, good. I thought that's what he's going to tell us at the end. That's what we had to do. No, this is about a posture of your heart, right? What did Proverbs 4:23? Your heart needs to be guarded. Your heart needs to be guarded. I would say your time needs to be guarded. Now, if I tell you that there is an intruder that's coming to your house, you would put up something to guard your house. Since I don't own any weapons to guard them, I will call friends that I know have them and say, dude, my house is about to be intruded, and I know you have that stuff, that thing you got that license for? Yeah, come over and please guard my house because my pocket knife from 5th grade is not going to help me. You would set up all types of guards to protect you. Friend, your time is being intruded. It's called advertisers. It's called things that are trying to, trivialize your life. Above all else, guard your time, guard your life. If we want to live a fruitful life, then we have to be absolutely vigilant about saying, hey, we are just going to fight to guard our time. God's reality is that our time is limited. It's brief, and it's also this amazing gift. We have a choice. Will we set our lives in Jesus? Will we orient our lives around Jesus and what he has for us? Or will we chase trivial things? If we want any hope of doing that, we're not going to pray our way there. We're not going to study our way there. We're going to get there by a battle plan. We're going to get there by a fight plan. See, the Christian life, you don't have to earn anything. But the Christian life does demand of us effort. What does 2 Peter chapter 1 say? Make every effort to add to your faith. And then it lists these kinds of things. The Christian life is not opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning, as Dallas Willard would say. If you and I want any hope of time not being wasted, not being trivialized, we need a fight plan. And I would say a fight plan for your time has 3 elements. It's 1, that you would be focused. 2, that you'd be action-oriented. And 3, that you'd be bold. This is a fight plan. We're not playing games as it relates to your time. Your time is your life. For where your time is, there your heart will be also. And where your heart goes, your whole life goes. So if you and I are not absolutely intense about a fight plan with our time, it will get trivialized. It will get spent in all kinds of directions that take us nowhere. So will we have a fight plan that we engage in? Will we be focused? Will we be action-oriented? Will we be bold? What does it mean to be focused, Ryan? I'm glad you asked. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Being focused means orienting our lives around Jesus as the dominant priority in our lives. It means that we literally open our hands to God each day and we just say, God, this is your day. Help me to know how fleeting my life is, Psalm 39, 4 and 5. Help me to know that my life is but a few handbreadths. Help me to remember Job 14, verse 5, that you've decreed the number of my days and I will not exceed the limits you put on them. There will be a day, my tombstone has an end to the hyphen. And you know it. And that could overwhelm me, that could scare me, or that could just remind me of reality. And from that reality, I can live with wisdom. God, help me to be focused. One of the things we do here at Soma City, we've launched this thing on our app called a guided prayer thing. It's a simple way to just help recalibrate and reorient our lives around Jesus and who he is and what he has for us. Being focused doesn't mean you need to become a monk today. Being focused means that you would have a few moments throughout your day where you just pause, you take a deep breath, you breathe in God's goodness, and you breathe out all your stress, all your anxiety, and you just say, God, help me to realize every moment is a gift of yours. I surrender this moment to you. You don't need 3 hours a day. Sometimes you just need 3 critical minutes a day. Just say, God, this day is yours. I mean, imagine your morning starting not by looking at your phone the first 3 minutes, not by looking at CNN or Fox or CNBC. Imagine your first 3 minutes every morning just saying, God, help me remember today my life is fleeting. You've decreed the number of days I'm given, and they're limited, and I will not exceed those. May I live the life you've given me, the relationships you've given me. If I'm married, my spouse. If I have kids, my kids. Help me today to live with wisdom. Teach me to number my days so that I may have a heart and a life of wisdom. That's what being focused is about. The second thing is being action-oriented. One of my favorite words, and something I struggle with so often, is decisions. They say that leaders are nothing more than decision makers. You know, the word decision in Latin is kind of the opposite of incision. When you cut in, I know a lot of us do that, right? Hopefully you don't, unless you're like sanctioned surgeon. Hopefully you're not cutting into anybody, but you know, we've had incisions, right? I've got a bad one on my knee. I won't show you my scar. That'd be disgusting. And you'd be like, oh, that's horrible. But an incision, they cut in and they fill your leg with water and then they do the things right there and then they close it up, hopefully right, and then they sew back together. That's an incision, cutting in. Decision is cutting things out. Some of the greatest leaders in the world are people that come into organizations and say, we're not doing this anymore. We're cutting this out. We're cutting out options. When somebody says, hey, where do you want to go for dinner? What do you have to do? You have to make a decision. And you're like, oh, just anywhere, just tacos. Well, that just narrowed it down to like everything, like Chipotle tacos or Taco Bell or, El Camino, you name it. You have to make a decision. To be action-oriented, friends, sometimes you need to decide what needs to go in your life. I'm convinced most of us have just said yes to everything. And God's saying, that wasn't my yes for you. You said yes to that. Now, there are some things that you have said yes to that God's like, no, you did say yes to her. You did say yes to them. After that, we need to make some hard decisions. Being action-oriented is saying, God, this has to go. Maybe I don't need 10 weeks this year of television. I mean, maybe you do. You don't. But maybe you're like, no, I do. I mean, like, if I don't hear Tucker every night or, Don Lemon every night, like, I'm empty. No, you're not. You'll make it. What needs to go? I'm guessing 10 weeks of television this year could probably at least be thinned down to 5, maybe 4, maybe a week. What needs to go? Being action-oriented. And that's why we need to, number 3, be bold. What did Jesus say in John 15? You didn't choose me, but I chose you. And I put you in this world, friend, to bear fruit. You are here on a mission. God has a mission for you, and it's you would be bearing fruit with your life. And if we are chasing, and if I'm chasing 101 trivial things, I will not bear fruit that God wants me to bear. I won't, because I'll be chasing all these other things. And yes, I have a friendship with God. And yes, I'm in a relationship with him. But I'll miss out on the moments that God has me. You're given moments. You're not given forever. It's sobering, but it's also liberating to actually step into the life God has for you. I chose you and I put you in this world for this glimpse of a moment to bear fruit that won't spoil. See, Jesus doesn't just want your time, friend. He wants you. He wants me. Your time is your life. And your life is your time. And he's saying, I want you, friend. One of the things we encourage people who've never prayed a prayer to really enter into a relationship with Jesus is a simple prayer. Jesus, I believe, which means I trust, and I give you my life. I think for many of us, we need to pray that prayer again this morning. To say, Jesus, I believe, Jesus, I trust, and I give you my time. All of it. Not an hour on Sundays, not 30 minutes on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night. I give you my life. Help me to live it from your wisdom. One of the best things we could do as his people is even invite other people into that conversation. Isn't it interesting? You and I will go meet with a financial planner about retirement and how we're investing our money. Have you ever sat down honestly with somebody and say, hey, will you look at my day timer? Will you look at my Palm Pilot, my Franklin Planner? Will you look at my life and ask me, am I spending these precious limited moments with wisdom? Or am I just chasing trivial things that in the end won't matter? Wouldn't that be amazing if the church were a community of people who sat down and said, hey, look at my life. What do you think? Where's the gaps? Where am I over-investing? Where am I just being foolish? Where am I being selfish? Be specific. If you're saying, hey, I have an issue with my phone, as we all probably do. If you're like, hey, I have an issue, don't say, well, this week I want to use my phone less. Pick a specific thing. Be focused. Say, Monday through Friday, 5 to 8 p.m., this is going in a lockbox, and it's not coming out until somebody else unlocks it. And hopefully he or she does. And if they don't, I'll be like, well, I guess I got to buy a new phone. Like, be focused in your fight plan. Otherwise, everything I've said today, you'll forget it by the time you've logged off our Facebook or driven down the hill here at the 5. Be focused. Be specific. Be vigilant in this fight to guard your time. Where your time goes, there your life goes. Your life is simply a result of your lifestyle. Let's live it with wisdom. Let's say, Jesus, I believe and I give you my life.